Welcome to the In My Opinion Show with host Ronald Barrington Robinson and friends. Seen on the internet via YouTube, enter in capital letters RBRIMO to watch our exciting programming. Subscriptions are free. The In My Opinion Show is seen on Flint, Michigan Comcast Cable Television Channel 17 every Saturday at 6 p.m. and every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. The In My Opinion Show is also seen on Detroit, Michigan Comcast Cable Television Channel 68 every Sunday at 9 p.m. We want to welcome our worldwide viewers. We hope that you will enjoy our programs that are newsworthy, educational, political, and entertaining. If you would like to be a guest on this exciting program or have different opinions on our subject matter, please email our producers at inmyopinionrbr@att.net. I want to welcome our worldwide viewers and my very talented co-host, Mr. Henry Hatter.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. Miss Denise Smith-Allen.
How you doing, Ron?
Great. Let's talk about the war on poverty. The war on poverty has not been achieved. Why? 50 million plus Americans go hungry each day. 1 out of 6 children go hungry every day. Flint, Michigan, the city in which we broadcast our worldwide programs, is one of the thousands of those towns. Cities across this great nation that is suffering from a nutritional food crisis. Why? The U.S. is the richest country in the world. Then if we're labeled as the richest country in the world, we shouldn't have 50 million people going hungry, especially our children, 1 out of 6. Mr. Hatter, what is your thoughts?
Ron, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to diverge widely on this. First of all, I don't think that 50 million people go hungry every day. I have seen no dead bodies anywhere. I've heard of no dead bodies anywhere. When I go into the schools, I see thousands of pounds of food that's wasted each day. And that's our most vulnerable population, are the kids who are in school districts. When we triage this, then the older people have to be number 2. And 3 would be those who are handicapped or without other types of body functioning activities that support their daily lifestyles. But I just think that we're exaggerating a lot in this country. You have to go to other countries to see starvation at its best. We are, and Ron, I would ask you to reconsider. When you say that we're the richest country in the world, please begin to downgrade that. We're no longer the richest country in the world. We have low unemployment, we have low engagement with human resources, and the more people you have working, engaged in resources, will determine whether you have a great standard of living. We're losing that. Our dollar is just about near collapse. We don't have the gold that support our dollar, and any day we could have a disaster. So somewhere we have to cut back to save the country for a new generation. We can't go on spending money that we don't have. We can't go on making cases that are not true. We have to face reality. Nobody goes hungry in this country. We could do better.
That is totally not true, Henry.
Ron,
these,
how many people have died?
These statistics,
how many people have
you don't
died?
have to die.
How many have died of diseases?
I'm talking about
from
hunger.
Malnutrition.
I'm talking about hunger, okay?
And how do you gauge that?
Well, these statistics come from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Are those people hired in those
CDC,
departments to produce those statistics? Yes, they are. And
okay.
that's a livelihood for them. But we need to look at, we need to bring reality to this discussion, because I don't think it exists. I think that
you might see food, going to waste, perhaps maybe in your area, okay?
in all other areas too.
Food, I don't have that information.
But the government passed legislation several years ago requiring all school districts to provide breakfasts and lunches for children.
But we're not just talking about school.
But that's the most needed. Okay, you triage them. That's the most needed. We have that. Now we're taking and evaluating that and wondering whether it's truly working. And nobody will ever come up and challenge this. With all of the waste, they're afraid that people will say, well, you're a racist, or you're a bigot, or you're against poor people, or you're against the system, or whatever. We can never bring this back to reality.
But see, you're talking about school. I'm talking about school as well as, you know what I mean, infants in the home, all right, before they even get to school.
Ron,
All right.
I think that all of it is like a continuum from the cradle to the grave in terms of how, people who don't have the means to take care of the basic necessities, how are they surviving? Okay, so we were talking earlier, and then I mentioned to you, as far as I'm concerned, this whole idea of the war on poverty, that is a notion that comes to mind from the 60s and 70s. That to me does not have the same meaning as it should have right now, because we have, in this area alone, you have to think about the stores that have closed up in Flint. We have a food desert right now because we don't have the economic wherewithal to how to retain supermarkets in the area. So people have to travel outside of the area just to get, some of the basic staples to have in their kitchen so that they can cook and take care of their families. So it goes beyond that. You're talking about kids going to school. You're talking about mothers who are on special programs so that they can get milk for their children and cereal and things of that nature. This state has been impacted. It's been impacted because of all the things that have transpired that we're all aware of, GM and all of that. But in addition to that, we also have the natural disasters that have come upon the United States that have influenced how our resources are being distributed. Every day, we look at the newspaper, watch TV, and we've got something going on in one part of the country that definitely is going to affect us economically on another plane, okay? And especially when you're talking about produce, food, your basic things that are needed for the survival. Not to mention the jobs that are being lost. So everything is relative. So the war on poverty, to me, is a misnomer. I don't like that term. We have the haves and the have-nots in this country.
Sure.
And we're having more of a disparate group of people now because of our economic environment. And that's just period.
Can I just comment on that?
Sure.
Because I think Denise has a point here. Now, as we've talked about for a number of years here, what's going on in the United States, and many people are blind to this. They pretend they don't see it. Our population is steadily rising. Resources are declining. Jobs have left the country. It's left a big, as Denise says, a desert someplace. Resources. Many people are not engaged the way we were 50 years ago in economic activity. There was a time when people in the South earned their own livings, and they were independent, and they were proud, and they took care of their families, and they provided for their families, and provided for the next generation through the transfer of land and stuff like that. That is gone now because we've had so many government programs that has taken away our will to be independent and to be resourceful enough to fend for ourselves. We need to go back to that because as our population continues to increase and we move new people in that become Americans, they will not tender this process of protecting certain segments of the population. They will consume them. We need to prepare our kids for survival in the future.
But how do we do that?
Well, we need to let them know that, first of all, you got to discontinue waste. How many times have you gone into a restaurant or into a smorgasbord shop? They don't call them smorgasbords anymore.
All you can eat.
All you can eat.
My favorite.
Hey, and look at what people put on their plates and look what they leave.
Yeah.
Take a look at that. And the stuff that we throw away in one dining room setting can lasts perhaps a week for a small village in Africa or in some other parts of the world where food
India.
is scarce. It's
Flint.
India. And we look at it in this country, we blindside this and we say, well, we got poor people in the country, but look at what we're wasting.
And not only wasting, but as I think, Henry, you did allude to this, people don't understand what poor is. The poorest person in this country is still better off than a lot of the population in other segments of the world. And we can't even wrap our heads around that because we haven't seen it, so it doesn't make sense to us. You don't see it on the news, so you don't even realize, how some people are trying to manage off of $244 a year, not a month, not a week, but a year. We can't wrap our heads around that kind of thing. So, you're talking about what's going on in this country, but I know that there is a lot of waste, and a lot of people are not used to looking at viable options. Like, okay, create a job. Well, how do I do that? Well, there's ways you can do that, but you have to learn. You have to be willing to take on that responsibility of learning how to develop something, So that takes time, true that. But in the meantime, you have to eat, So if you're going to rely on government programs, do not let that become a way of life. Let that be for the shortest duration that it can possibly be. In the meantime, you educate yourself or you go and get some kind of trade. You learn how to take care of yourself. Because other groups that are coming into the country, they come in with that mindset, okay? And so economically, there are people that are going to be much more advanced than other groups in this country that have been here for a while simply because the mindset has to change. The mindset has to change. So again, like I said, we're dealing with an old paradigm, war on poverty. It's an old paradigm.
And Ron, I do think, as Denise thinks, that Black Americans, and they very seldomly segment out the people in the United States, very seldomly. But this time I'm going to talk about Black Americans.
Okay.
Black Americans, because they're so immersed in these issues dealing with poverty and racism and drugism and all of that stuff, we can become the change agent in this country with a loud voice. Because if we can arise out of these ashes, as you often talk about, Denise, we can inspire the country to become a better country, become a country that will sustain itself for another several generations. But only Black Americans can do that, because everybody else is wondering whether they're going to do more damage to Black Americans or hurt their feelings or whatever by taking away from them. We have to be the inspiration agent to point out that there's lots of waste, to point out that we don't necessarily need drugs. And people who go to jail for drugs, they are on their own. Their choices of their own.
Okay.
You know.
Well, the choices definitely are their own. We know that drugs didn't just appear out of the sky. They were brought in, and some of that was done by design. But again, we all have to go back to that free will, that choice.
Okay.
We all have to go back to that. So,
I'm sorry I got off the topic. I just
Yeah.
wanted to put that in there about self-responsibility.
I got you.
We need to become that experience. We need to become that agent for the first time to rise out of those ashes and lead the country. If you want to change something, then lead it.
Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
Well, we're going to change our subjects here. Let's talk about welfare drug testing. Why does it always seem to be in the minority communities or among minorities? 2014 census report, total population of the state of Michigan is almost 10 million. Whites almost 79, 7,803,000 more or less. All right, Black African Americans 1,400,000, Hispanics 436. Common sense will tell us if you look at the numbers, more drugs are consumed by whites than all other groups combined. This also applies to people on welfare. As people as people of color, we must stand up against faulty counting by the politicians in Lansing that lie to the citizens about rampant drug use in our urban communities. These lies further bolster the stereotype of white supremacy. Denise, let's go to you first on that. What's your opinion?
Well, first of all, drug testing is not done on a racial lines. Under racial lines. You know, if a person is receiving aid and there is suspected drug usage, then the white mother, the Mexican mother, and the black mother, they're going to be charged. I mean, not charged, excuse me, but they're going to be tested. Okay? So I don't believe that that is actually an accurate, summation of saying, well, it's a minority thing. Okay, there may be a perception of it being a minority thing, but the reality is that mothers, fathers, whoever is the caretaker of the children, if there is a suspected drug usage, they're supposed to use that thing unilaterally. It is not supposed to be, okay, we're going to test her because, she's black or whatever. That's, no. They would have legal grounds to go after whoever is doing that, but that's not the reality.
Well, I differ with you on that because I've seen it firsthand. I mean, not necessarily. Well, when I was working, all right, they would drug test the minority officers, okay, and the white officers, no drug tests, all right. So I can't see that it's it's any different in any other agencies, all right. Especially if you've got somebody that's in charge that can say, well, you're next, drug test, or I don't like this person, okay, you drug test, all right. It's not equal. Mr. Heder, what is your thought?
Ron, I'm not going to argue with you on that. You know, and Denise and I know that you're right about that. That in the old days, that's what they did. They picked on people of color. And usually I don't bring race into my arguments, but I do realize that happened. There's a lot of evidence for it.
Of course, and especially when you got 10 million whites, all right, as opposed to 1,400,000 African Americans. But the sheer numbers alone will tell you who's doing the drugs.
Yeah.
But yet law enforcement always wants to say it's in the urban communities. All right? No, the drugs is out there in the suburbs, out there in the country.
Okay. Oh, where I live.
Well, not necessarily.
In the rural areas, there's drugs. In the urban areas, there's drugs. There's drugs. Okay. But my question, because we're still talking about welfare testing, and if welfare testing is being done the way it is designed to do, if a person is suspected of drug usage, because we're not talking about officers inside working in prison, we're talking about people who are receiving aid, okay? And a lot of those same individuals, if they may be receiving aid, they may also have some issues with child welfare agency, which is part of that conglomerate. Those individuals are going to be required at some point to be drug tested. And they're not going to single out minority. They're not going to do that. They have to test all. They have to.
Well, they're supposed to.
They have to.
Okay.
Ron, I'm not going to argue with Denise because she is the lady on the can, and she wins all the time.
No. I'm not winning. This is not an argument to be won, but I'm saying.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that in support of Denise.
Okay.
That she's right. The man doesn't care who you are, what you look like, where you live, how much money you got. When there's a job that requires drug testing, like, for example, if you're going to operate a public transportation system, right? Or you're going to be around students under some.
But we're not talking about that.
But yes, we are.
No, we're talking about welfare
testing.
drug testing.
Okay.
All right. If you gotta take a drug test for a job or something, that's totally different.
Oh, okay.
All right?
Now, that's what I want to argue. Thank you for clarifying that for me. But if you're receiving dollars from the public takes out of their pocket and put into a pool to provide so that you so they can get qualified people under certain circumstances to qualify for federal funding, or state funding, or local funding, so that they can receive public assistance. What's wrong with it?
There's nothing wrong
So
with
what's
it.
wrong with it, Ron?
There's
because
nothing wrong.
because you're taking money, and the things are not just done to benefit you or to benefit a few, but they're done to benefit the system so that the system functions efficiently and effectively. Now, you're right, but in the old days, they used to test people by color, but I don't think they do that
Of
anymore.
course they do. You know,
I don't think they do that
I'm so
anymore,
sick and
Ron.
tired of white folks always pointing out, you know, that the drugs are, you know, and rampant in the black neighborhoods. All right, in the black neighborhoods, you hear that mess all the time, and it's not true. It's not fair.
But wouldn't
know?
our kids be better off if we just conducted a survey, went out on our own, hired someone from Harvard or from Tuskegee Institute or one of the other great universities, go in and test that premise. See if there's rampant use of drugs. Without the research, you have nothing to defend, nothing to teach.
It's been a lot of research. on
no,
it.
but
Ron, but when we make those kind of statements, like the statement that you're making right now, you've given us numbers about the population. Okay.
Right.
Now, are you talking about all of this population that you just identified? Are all of these on welfare? No.
I didn't say that.
No, I know you didn't. But what I'm trying to say is you have to pull those numbers out. You've got the numbers of African Americans, Hispanics, and whites. The total population of Michigan.
Exactly.
Okay. However, of that total population, there are X amount of people who you don't have identified that are receiving public funds.
Probably so.
Okay, and of that group, of that same group, there are also people who have committed crimes and are also receiving funds. And of that same group, there are people who have committed crimes who are drug-related crimes, and are of that group. So then we're going to break it down even further. And of that group, there are also those same people that are connected to the child welfare system. And because of that, they have a right on two fronts to drug test. And they're drug testing not just minorities, they're drug testing across the board. And at this point, statistics would clarify it. You could shake your head, but statistics will clarify it.
Statistics will point out by sheer numbers alone will tell you who's on welfare and who's doing drugs.
And
All
you will
right?
find out.
You will find
out that there are probably more whites that are on drugs.
That's my point.
That's his
Okay,
point.
so
And he's right.
yeah. So what's? But I'm still trying to figure out what the argument is.
There isn't an
Well,
argument.
actually, there are two arguments. He's saying that contrary to how it's perceived by the press and by the public, is that more whites use drugs than blacks.
Okay.
And statistically, that's true because
Yes.
if you take, let's see, compare the blacks may be 20% of the population, okay, and whites are 60%.
Yeah.
Well, 60% of the population is much greater than 20%. It's three times that there's a three times gap in there.
Okay.
So what we're arguing is true that that there are more white. But if you look at it, the population on a per capita basis, take our population versus the number of people who in this population use drugs compared to white population, you may see a different statistic.
You sure will.
And that's the argument that we're trying to reconcile here.
Okay.
And it does make sense, Ron. But what you say makes sense too. We're not discounting that, but we have to have accept some responsibility for statistics that are hidden here.
Well, all I'm asking for is a fair portrayal, you know what I mean, of the actual usage
Okay.
All right, but we don't get that.
You're not going
All
to
right.
get that through the media. You're not
No,
going to get
you're
that.
not.
So
Or
what-
Lansing.
But what we have to do again is be vigilant in our and recognizing that there's data out there, and all you have to do is access the data to find out about who's doing what.
Absolutely.
And you can get that. And you can get that, and then you would have more credence to your argument, and then you would be able to spell it out that we already know, and it's common sense really, that because based on the numbers, who's doing the drugs.
Let's ask the government to provide a contract to Howard University or to one of the other major American colleges to study this issue. What we're arguing today in Flint, Michigan is true in every other city
Absolutely.
in the United States. So a study of this could reveal some light, and we can reconcile our arguments and get on with life in the country without stereotyping
Exactly.
on this particular issue. We'd have to choose something else.
Listen.
Yeah.
Listen, okay, we're getting ready to, I'm sure, getting ready to end this, but I will say this, that we understand that the media is not going to give a fair representation. So it is up to us, as truth fighters, if you will, to be able to get our statistics and be able to counter whatever is out there.
Exactly.
Because that's the only thing that's going to help, because we can be emotional about it and say what we need to have, but we got to have hard facts, statistics, and that will help.
And when
And
these
the rest of the world will recognize it.
and
They
when
will
the-
appreciate
And when the
it.
politicians get to blowing all this so foolishness out of their mouth, stand up and
Yeah.
take it and be counted and
Yeah.
stop the, tell the truth, quit lying. But anyway, this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank our millions of viewers worldwide, our talented technical crew, and my very learned co-host. This is Ronald Berry Robinson and friends saying, until next time, stay focused.